Greetings, adventurers. This is Lauren, your guild advisor. Welcome back to DanMachi Season 3 cut content and review for episode 6. And those of you may have seen a post I put on YouTube yesterday, I think, or actually, if you're watching this on Saturday, then that means 2 days ago. Whatever. But basically, I just kind of explained that I've been stressing myself out lately. And the whole build up to season 3 of DanMachi, with me releasing like all those cut content videos, those big gigantic ones for season 2, and then doing everything up until this point, has slightly burned me out. So I'm just trying to take a little tiny step back. So I apologize, but episode Freya, my review still isn't out yet. That review and spoiler talk video, that will be out eventually. I'm not going to put a timeline and doom myself. And as far as those like big mega cuts and changes videos that I did in the style of season 2, where I break them down volume by volume according to the episodes. So like season 3 episodes 1 through 4 would be volume 9. Those big mega videos are still planned to be released. I just don't know when I'll put in the time to do them, because like I said, I've been burning myself out lately. And like pretty much up until this point, like starting from like weeks before season 3 started, all I've been doing with my free time, like away from my full-time job, is just straight up DanMachi, and I've been driving myself insane, so I apologize, but I'll be taking my time on that stuff. But of course, I will stay consistent on these weekly cut content and episode reviews, because that is manageable. So I apologize for that, but let's get into the episode and discuss what was changed from the light novel and what was skipped. So episode 6 of season 3 adapts about 56 pages from the light novel, which is the volume I have displayed right here, with some amazing, like one of my favorite covers of DanMachi actually, because Bell looks super awesome in this shot. But anyway, and it also adapts a tiny bit of the stuff that was kind of skipped over at the very beginning of volume 10 regarding the stuff about Daedalus, and we'll get into all of that in this episode review. And that's kind of how the episode begins. It kind of shows you this crazy, insane kind of man just kind of digging in a tunnel, and they don't really give any context to that. When you see that shot, but they explain who Daedalus is as the episode goes on. And I just, again, like last week I commented, like, I don't know where Ikelos is supposed to be standing here. Like in the light novel, it is said he's standing on some abandoned tower in the middle of Daedalus Street. But as far as the background art goes, it doesn't make too much sense to me, because we've seen Daedalus Street before. It was in the season 1. That's where Bell was running through when he was running from the Silverback during Monsterphilia, and eventually where he fought it. And we also seen a tiny bit of Daedalus when Bell escapes from Ikelos Familia after Haruhime guides him through this secret tunnel into Daedalus Street. So, like, as far as the background art goes for this shot with Ikelos, it doesn't make too much sense, because it just looks like a total barren wasteland of buildings. Like, this is still supposed to be in Arario, and you don't really see the color of Arario like anywhere in this shot. It's just buildings and buildings and buildings all abandoned and kind of brown, with no sign of where Arario, where in Arario this might be, like where the border is between different districts that are more colorful. And then we're brought into the situation on floor 18 Rivera, where a lot of the Xenos have pretty much just destroyed the city, the little dungeon town of Rivera, and it shows Gross interrogating like those 3 guys that you saw Ranye spit that poison onto. They went to Rivera to get some medicine to clear up that poison. That's how Gross and folks found them, because that was part of Ranye's plan, to spit the poison on them, and hopefully the Xenos would recognize that scent of the poison and be able to find the people who violated her. And that's exactly what happens here. In the novel, it's mentioned that Gross and others like kill the other 2, and then they don't show it here, but Gross actually like straight up claws the guy in the shoulder to get the information out of him. And after he spills the beans about there being some hidden type of door in the east side of the forest, he does end up taunting Gross that even if he knew where the entrance was, he doesn't have that thing, that key we see later on in the episode. And that's when Gross pretty much figures out that he's not going to say anything else. He's lived out his usefulness and straight up kills the guy on the spot. So the anime's been really toning down that violence, and I think I can see like maybe why they would censor that kind of stuff, like not show too much violence, because they've been like portraying DanMachi as this lighter tone of show, and it is a light tone in like compared to like Goblin Slayer. But season 3 is where things start getting a lot darker in tone, so I think you kind of miss out on some of the severity of the tone when they don't show like the more violent parts are starting to happen in the series, starting with season 3. But because we go straight into this shot with the subjugation team already in 418, that means we did indeed skip what I mentioned last week, where Bell is like meeting up with Ganesha Familia, and that's when he meets Monica, and Monica tells him that Bell needs to lay low because no one actually knows that that's actually the little rookie with them. And Fels was also supposed to be around, hiding under an invisibility cloak of his making and going ahead into the dungeon himself. And we don't see Fels in this episode until Bell chases after Leto after leaving behind Ryu. So it's really weird how they skip a lot of Fels scenes and then he just pops up out of nowhere. And then that last part I mentioned last week, before Bell heads down into the dungeon with the Ganesha Familia, is Hestia Familia themselves showing up at the spot, yelling after Bell. And again, like I mentioned, that's when Bell like gives them the look, since he can't really shout out to them. He gives them a look of determination, like, please let me go. And then Hestia looks back at Bell, pretty much giving him her blessing. So I'm ultimately disappointed that that scene wasn't kept in the anime, because I think like a lot of these scenes that are skipped with Hestia show her in a different, more mature light, and because we're not getting those scenes, she's still kind of that gag comic relief character when she does have serious scenes, but the anime just doesn't adapt them for some reason. And I think that really stunts her growth as a character as far as the anime adaptation is involved. One thing I am happy that they kept is the whole gag with everyone forgetting what Monica's name is. Though it's kind of weird they keep that gag in, but not like some of the stuff, like the more serious stuff that I mentioned earlier, but it's cool they kept that. And a minor complaint, like on the framing of the shot, the conversation between Ryu, Aisha, and Osfi, like they're talking to each other. And you hear Osfi's voice, but she's not even in the frame. It's so weird. And they do show Osfi in a frame after this, but when she starts talking, we don't see her yet. It's just like Ryu and half of Aisha's body, and then you hear Osfi's voice, so it's kind of weird framing to me. And after Shakti divides the team into two different groups, one to find survivors in Rivera, and the other to pursue the Xenos, Bell's a bit confused on where he should go, and then that's when Fels appears in the light novel and says, Bell, come this way, I spotted Leto earlier, and that's when Bell follows after the team of Ganesha Familia, and that's what Shakti chasing after the Xenos. And as they're chasing the Xenos, as they're headed, because they're all going towards the eastern part of the forest to find that hidden door to Gnosis. I don't know why it's called Knossos. That seems weird to me. I've always called it Gnosis, so that's what I'm going to say. But as they're headed towards Gnosis, the Xenos are fighting like actual like monsters, like bugbears and mad beetles. And when Ganesha Familia sees this, they're a bit confused. Like, why are monsters fighting monsters? And before I dive into the stuff between Leto and Bell, I want to mention that they completely skipped the scenes between Fels and Gross that happen in the light novel. They have this conversation when Fels is trying to convince Gross to stop the attacks, and that's when Gross tells him, well, if you want us to stop attacking, then tell the adventurers to leave. I want to see action, not words that you're just gonna be peaceful with us. And then Fels is a little bit disappointed because he's had this relationship between the Xenos for over 15 years, and Gross just accuses Fels of saying, ultimately, you would side with the humans, wouldn't you, Fels? And the knockout punch to this being skipped is that the skip scene was taken and then put into the danmemo side story for this week in the DanMachi mobile game. They've been doing like side stories pretty much every week to coincide and work with the anime episodes, and normally it's like stuff that expands upon the content, like stuff even light novel readers haven't seen before. But one time they adapted a scene between Loki Familia that was skipped in the anime, and then this week they adapted that scene between Fels and Gross into the mobile game. And that just really bothers me because the anime needs to stand alone as a product by itself. It's so weird to say, by the way, there was a skip scene in this anime. You need to check out the mobile game to see that. Like, that's not how you do it. That's not how you handle the anime. Because it's like, if it's supposed to be an anime adaptation of the novel, you can't say, well, if you combine the anime with the mobile game, then you get the full picture. Like, no, the full picture should just be the anime. And originally, kind of like what Aisha says, her, Ryu, and Osvi are supposed to be there to get information about the situation in the dungeon and also look after Bell. But when Ryu is looking at Ganesha Familia, like struggling against the monsters, she can't like look away from her sense of justice, and then that's when she goes, I will assist them. And she goes off to help them along with Aisha. And now Ryu has some history with Ganesha Familia. I'm not going to say too much about it, but there is a scene between her and Shakti in episode Ryu, which is a standalone light novel which takes place after the war game, so check that out. Also adapted into the DanMachi mobile game, danmemo, and I'll leave a link to the video description for that, as well as there being a manga adaptation for that. So lots of options for some more backstory between Ryu and Ganesha Familia, and there's also a mobile game event called Estrella Record, where there's a lot of Ryu and Ganesha Familia stuff along with her old familia, Estrella Familia. So a lot of cool context between Ryu and Ganesha Familia. Now, they don't really give Aisha and Ryu the most dynamic entrances. Originally what happens in the light novel is Ryu like comes from above and then strikes down a silverback from behind who is like almost about to like attack an adventurer. Here they just switched a monster to some unicorn for some reason, and Ryu just kind of strikes it head on. And then the adventurer like was never in the frame with this unicorn. He's like, oh, thank you. Who are you? But I do love they kept Ryu's line of her just being a stranger that's passing by. I'm just some random adventurer passing by in this very crazy situation. And then Aisha doesn't even get a dynamic entrance. Originally, Rei is shooting those feathers down at Ilta like you see in the anime, but Ilta just kind of dodges them. Originally, Aisha like pops into the scene, blocking those feathers with her sword, with a more dynamic entrance, and she's like trying to kick Rei out of the way. And also, while Ryu and Aisha are helping, that's when Shakti kind of looks at Ryu and is like, wait a minute, that elf. So it's hinted that there is some history between the two. But back to Bell and Leto. So originally, instead of like Bell, pretty much kind of like when he meets Leto in the anime, they kind of like cross swords. Leto like asks why Bell is even there, and then Bell just kind of like runs off, pretty much like guiding Leto to go alone so they're not like seen talking together. Originally, Leto like tackles Bell in the light novel and like pushes him into the forest. So this is just a different way of getting them separated from the fighting so they can actually talk to each other. Now, the weird thing in this conversation between Leto and Bell in the anime is that they make a point to show Leto drawing this line on the ground saying, don't cross this line. Basically saying, if you cross this line, that means you're accepting monsters, and then your integrity as an adventurer could come into question. And the weird part to this is that in the anime, they never show Bell crossing the line they made a point to make in the anime. And then at some point, Leto just roars at Bell. But originally, he roars at Bell when Bell actually takes the initiative to step over that line. So I don't know why they just... It's so weird to me. Like, a lot of the framing, like I mention this all the time, like some of the direction the anime just confuses me. Like, this is the perfect opportunity to showcase like some of your cinematography skills and show Bell crossing the line, and they never do that. And one thing I like in the light novel is that Bell is actually able to make connections between things. Like when Leto mentions like the poachers and hunters that captured the Xenos and killed some of them. Bell immediately thinks of Ikelos' face, and that's exactly who the culprit was. And also when Leto is mentioning like he can't control his rage towards the people that killed and captured the Xenos, like Bell's like, that's not really in his mind. He realizes that's not really a monstrous emotion. If the same thing were to happen to humans, if like a Familia's adventurers were killed by someone, they would also be enraged and want revenge. So what Leto is experiencing is no different from what a normal person would. So now we're brought to the conversation between Bell and Ryu, my favorite character. I was looking forward to this scene because it brings that line that Leto drew in the ground into question again. Because like Omori Sensei, the author of the light novels, like makes a point to mention this line again. And when Ryu was like extending her hand to Bell, like the anime, I don't know what's going on here, but the anime has Bell just look down and sad. Down and sad when Ryu is saying, I want you to go back up to the surface and let me handle things. And Bell's just looking down at the ground. And then next thing Ryu says in the anime is like, I see, you truly are an adventurer now. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. Refusing to say anything and looking down at the ground means Bell's an adventurer now. So what happens in the light novel is that when Ryu does that, Bell looks straight at Ryu with determination and walks away from her, crossing the line that Leto made in the ground. And again, I'm so confused, why even show Leto drawing this line if you're never going to use it the way that the light novel does? It just confused me. So, to me, this is one of those moments, that pivotal moment during the Minotaur fight in Season 1, when Eyes stands in front of Bell saying she'll take care of the situation. It's not as severe of a situation as that, right off the bat, but it's very similar to how Ryu is saying, I'll take care of this, you go home and be safe. And Bell's like, no, I'll do it. Bell steps in front of Eyes during the Minotaur fight. Bell steps away from Ryu and crosses the line during this moment in the light novel, and they don't do that here in the anime. And there's probably a lot of confusion concerning the pouch that Ryu gives to Bell in the anime. And I'll say this much. When reading Volume 10, there is also a bit of confusion as to why Ryu has this item, but Sword Oratoria Volume 5, which is Sword Oratoria is the side series to the main series of light novels that is more in the point of view of Ikelos Familia. And Sword Oratoria Volume 5 explains why Ryu has this item. But the light novel has Bell use the rationale that a possibility of Ryu having this Daedalus eye, this key to Gnosis, is because she once fought against the evils, or Evilus as the anime says, fought against Evilus in revenge for what happened to her Familia, Estrella Familia, and she might have just picked that up along the way when she was taking her revenge on them, and then just kept that in her item pouch. And in the anime, she explicitly says that I'm not sure if this will be useful, but here you go. She doesn't say anything like that in the novel. It's more like there's potions in here, please take them if you need them. That's pretty much what it was in the light novel. So then Bell meets up with Fels as they're headed towards the eastern edge of the floor, and then that's when the eye kind of makes this hot spot, and Bell notices it, takes it out, and then they see the entrance to Gnosis and then go through it. And then we go back to the point of view of Hestia Familia, and here they are just snooping around Babel, and I guess we're assuming that they just went there because they skipped Hestia Familia going to Babel last episode, but they're trying to figure out what they can do. And the big thing that bothers me here is that the anime is trying to pull a fast one on you. You're not crazy if you think you're misremembering something that occurred in Season 2, because it did not happen in Season 2. And let me explain. When you see Lily repeat, Hestia mentions selling monsters, and Lily latches onto that piece of conversation, Lily should not be able to do that. And they just go straight from Lily making that realization straight into the Soma cell where Xenos is being kept. Now before that, Lily says, let's go to Soma Familia, and then they kind of meet Soma, who's a lot nicer now, and also mentions that Chandra, that dwarf from Season 2, is now the captain because Xenos is being punished. His status was locked, so he doesn't really have the fallen capabilities of an adventurer. He doesn't even have his glasses anymore. He's just in this sunken state in that cell. And the thing the anime is pulling a fast one on you for is Lily saying that she remembers Xenos talking about selling monsters. He never does that in Season 2. That's why I had to make videos explaining him mentioning that during Season 2's airing. Because he doesn't say that in Season 2, and I double checked today. He doesn't say that. The anime is pulling a fast one on you, trying to make you think, well, maybe I forgot about that. You didn't, it wasn't mentioned. So, the anime is saying, this totally happened. And I have a big problem with that, because after Season 2 ended, they immediately announced Season 3. And when that type of situation happens, Normally that means Season 2 and Season 3 were already like ordered together to be done by JC staff. So they already knew they were going to do Season 3 while Season 2 was airing. So if they knew they were going to adapt the stuff in Season 3, why did they not just include this conversation between Xenos and Lily already? So when they have to bring it back up again in Season 3, it actually makes sense. I don't get it. It's almost like they had different people adapt Season 2 and Season 3, and the guy that was adapting Season 3 didn't know they skipped his conversation. And geez, when Bell and Fels like meet up with Gross and the rest of the Xenos against Dix and the rest of Ikelos Familia, it's just so awkward when Gross turns around and like yells at Bell because he's not moving, his mouth isn't moving. It's just so awkward hearing someone yell at Bell and they're just still the entire time during that sequence. And they give us this backstory about Daedalus and how he was one of the first people who got a blessing from Oranos, and then he was hired to make all these structures like Babel Tower, and eventually went crazy when he saw the dungeon because he didn't think he could like make anything that could surpass that, but he tried anyway and went crazy doing it. Like he made this maze-like structure of Daedalus Street, and then he started making Gnosis. But the one thing they did not mention, which I thought they would mention at some point because they even show it in one of the previous episodes, is the Daedalus notebook, which is pretty much the blueprint to Gnosis, and they show Dix holding it in the previous episode, so I'm wondering why they didn't mention that at all, but that's a thing. And they kind of just go straight into Dix using his curse, but there's a little bit of a battle that happens before that, where Bell's like fighting these hunters, and Dix like sees that the Xenos, Bell and Fels are putting up a good fight, and they're kind of losing it, so Dix just decides to use his curse magic. And the really weird thing about it is that it's explicitly mentioned in the light novel that everyone's eyes turns the same shade of crimson as Dix's eyes. And for some reason, they're purple in the anime. I don't understand. When something explicitly says same shade of crimson as Dix's eyes, you think they get the memo. I'm not sure why they decided to go with purple. It's just really strange to me, especially when they made the curse magic red. And then the frenzies that the curse makes people go under provide some context to how there's not too much information about Ikelos Familia in Aurario, because if anyone were like to discover something about them, Dix would just use that, and then that kind of clouds people's memories when they get out of that frenzy. And something that's interesting to take a note of is that this entire time Bell is like super hesitant to fight any monsters, but as soon as Fels like mentions, Bell, you gotta beat Dix because if you beat him then the curse effects will go away, and like for the first time in a long time, Bell has this look of determination, and he glares at Dix. Like this entire time he's been struggling to fight against monsters, and now that he has to fight a human, he's super determined. So it's kind of a interesting turnaround. Like adventurers are supposed to fight monsters, and here's Bell hesitant to fight monsters and then ready and determined to fight against the human. And for this last scene with the Almirage Aruru, the bunny-like Xenos who's riding on the Hellhound, followed by this big black creature. If you remember in a previous episode, Leto told Aruru to go get this Xenos, and if you remember, Leto mentioned that this Xenos was stronger than him and he was currently training in the deep levels. So that's who you're seeing right now who's running behind Aruru, and that's how they kind of end the episode. It's a bit different in the light novel, so I don't know if they're just going to go back to that next episode or not. But basically, there's this little scene with Ikelos Familia in the ruins of Rivera, and they're looking at all these like corpses on the ground and pools of blood, and they're also healing a dwarf and an elf. And the one thing that's interesting is that Ikelos Familia does not know that these dead bodies are of Ikelos Familia, so to them it just could be any adventurers, but they made a point, the Xenos made a point to pretty much only kill the people that were in Ikelos Familia, so the people that actually capture and kill them. So despite Gross and a lot of the Xenos being super angry at the adventurers, they really only put most of their anger towards the right people, the hunters, Ikelos Familia. And they were only fighting Ikelos Familia so they wouldn't follow them into Gnosis when they're trying to search for where their captured brethren are. But that's the episode, and I know I'm like super negative on a lot of aspects, and I know it's because I'm reading these light novels side by side along with the anime, and I just have big expectations. I don't know why I do, because I voiced this a lot, but season 2 did not have the best production value, and I think anyone who's been watching DanMachi since season 1 can see that. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that it's quite obvious that the production value of the show has gone down ever since DanMachi season 1, because a lot of the sequences in season 1 were done very well, like the silverback fight during Monsterphilia, of course the Minotaur fight, even the Bell saving Lily was really well done, and then of course the last couple episodes against the Black Goliath. But we have never quite reached those heights in terms of production value and animation when it comes to that Minotaur fight during season 1, in season 2, or season 3. We have not seen anything quite like that, and I think that's obvious to pretty much anyone. And I know it seems like I'm like overly harsh on the production of season 3 and also season 2, but and I should be a bit grateful that DanMachi is getting a season 2 and a season 3 when not a lot of other properties do. But, and I understand that this is also being made under like COVID, but that's not exactly an excuse, because there's a lot of other anime being made under those exact conditions that have a lot better production value. Like Fire Force this season, Jujutsu Kaisen this season, Haikyuu this season, The Journey of Elena this season, ReZero Season 2 Part 1 last season, also a light novel adaptation. And when you compare all of those against DanMachi Season 3, the production value of DanMachi Season 3 just pales in comparison. And it really confuses me on how the property is treated like this, because last year, 2019, DanMachi was the 7th highest selling light novel in Japan. You would think that something that sells that much would have a bit more production value behind it. It's just really weird to me. And I know JC Staff is capable of so much more, because we just came off an excellent Railgun T adaptation, and they even delayed episodes. Like they delayed episodes throughout the winter and spring season just to make sure the episodes were coming out with good quality, and it was great. And so we know what JC Staff is capable of, and we're just not seeing that same type of like production with DanMachi Season 3. I'm not sure if that's because of JC Staff and the scheduling, or the production committee wanting this to be done now. I don't know. I have no idea. But we'll see what happens towards the end of the season. Like, we'll see if they're actually saving everything for the end of the season. But to get halfway into the season and not see too much like cool animated sequences or production values anywhere, I'm skeptical. But anyway, again, if you want to see that danmemo side story that adapts the skipped portion with the conversation between Gross and Fels, check out Mediocre's channel. I'll link that in the video description. I'm curious to see what like novel readers think about this episode. Did you have some of the same gripes as me? Like, what are you doing with the management of Lily recognizing this thing that Xenos apparently said in season 2 that they definitely skipped out on adapting during season 2? What did the anime onlys think about this episode? Like, did that whole Xenos situation catch you off guard and make you question yourself? Like, did I forget something? Who knows? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and then I'll also see you guys next week for episode 7. And hopefully it's well done, because a lot of crazy stuff happens in these next 2 episodes. Actually, just the rest of the entire season should be crazy if adapted correctly. And with the way it's been going, I'm, of course, being pessimistic about some aspects of this season. But anyway, I'll be back next week. If you want to see more DanMachi content, go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and join the Discord. And as always, continue enjoying your time adventuring in Radio and the Dungeon. This is Lauren, your guild advisor, signing out. 渦を巻く雨雲から差し込んだ